Overpopulation is the main driving factor or a major driving factor behind every single problem that you can mention.
This is the only one which addresses really the core problem at the heart of almost all the planet's environmental challenges, and that would be overpopulation.
We need to address much more aggressively the population part of the equation.
Marine explorer Jacques Cousteau has called on world leaders attending the Earth Summit to take drastic action to stop uncontrolled population growth.
The overall demand of humanity is already exceeding what Earth can regenerate, so possibly in the long run, not even the current population is sustainable.
We have been told by our fates that we need to be fruitful, fill the Earth, but the Earth is full, and now it's time to think about sustainability.
Why don't environmentalists talk about this at all?
She's running.
Overpopulation is a phenomenon that occurs when there are too many inhabitants in a certain area, causing the resources to be insufficient. It is a problem so subtle and belittled, barely discussed outside its contributions to climate change. Generally, people only talk about how it causes higher demands and leads to higher extraction of usage of fossil fuels, which harm the atmosphere. But today, I'll show you why it's so much worse and why people in general don't talk about it too much. Ready? Let's begin. Nature works in a simple way. Living beings share space with other living beings and compete with each other for resources. Earlier established countries got rich by utilizing resources effectively, regardless of who owned it. The British, for example, plundered their colonies, causing a huge disparity in wealth. It's such a basic concept that it's funny thinking how we aren't concerned about it as much as we should. Our country isn't exactly small and landmass, and we also have a decent amount of resources to work with. So why aren't we rich? The point of this video is not to downplay the detriments corruption has caused the country. It's to present us a theory of why it has been going on for so long and what our population has to do with it. The reason we mentioned the concept of nature earlier is to remind ourselves that there are too many of us. We have a population of over 111 million people. That's more than any other country in Europe except for Russia. Honestly, we shouldn't even be comparing our country to Russia in terms of population, seeing how massive their country is. Now, if we compare the living standards of Europeans and ourselves, it's evident that theirs is higher. They have a higher quality of housing, services, and transportation, among other aspects. Going by this logic, we can infer that there must be a correlation between population and living standards, where the lower the population, the better the standards of living. However, this isn't to say that a country can't be rich because of a huge population. Some countries like China and India have huge populations, and yet they are able to have such powerful economies. It all just comes down to good business, production, and governance. But even then, there will still be a lot of poor people, because a huge population may not always create a poor nation, but it will surely create poor people. Overpopulation definitely has many negative effects. Overpopulation causes scarcity of resources, first of all, and that's what it does at the root of it all. What people don't concern themselves with oftentimes, though, is what scarcity really does to us slowly over the course of generations. Scarcity comes in many forms, but its clearest example is in the decreasing amount of available land for roads and houses, especially in dense areas. This leads to traffic congestion and clumped housing, both of which cause severe problems in economic production and living conditions. Our increasing population increases our consumption of products and services as well, in both luxuries and necessities. Overconsumption and high demands cause shortages in supply, leading to an increase in prices. This hits low-income groups horribly because they become unable to afford basic necessities. In the worst cases, some might resort to a life of crime just to survive. You might have noticed that a lot of people caught stealing say that they do it because of financial issues. It's also worth noting that in order to provide for water, electricity, and food, nature also takes a toll. When new dams, farms, or factories are built, The balance of the ecosystem built up over time is disturbed, affecting wildlife and even people. A good example of this is in the case of Angat Dam, where indigenous people's livelihood, mainly fishing, has suffered due to the siltation and other environmental challenges and changes caused by the dam. Focusing on the economic side during this time, another recurring problem encountered is the insufficient number of jobs. This has caused a sizable amount of our workers to go out of the country as OFWs. Those who don't have the option of doing so end up working for jobs with insubstantial pay. Even worse, some may end up jobless. Jobless people, especially those in the slums, typically end up with more children as well, further decreasing their chances at getting jobs. This is also another factor which may lead people to resort to a life of crime. Now, these two effects are very detrimental, and they are arguably the two most direct and biggest effects of overpopulation. But these aren't the only effects, and well, we also have to talk about what we can do to actually alleviate this problem. To find out more, stay tuned for the next video.